What do psychologists mean by the word perception? Well, they have defined perception as the process through which we become aware of things around us and of what happens inside our own bodies. But is perception a mere sensing of a stimulus through the eyes, ears, and various organs of touch? Definitely not. Psychologists today know that human perception isn't nearly that simple. This conclusion is based on certain principles of perception which have been developed from experimental research. We can illustrate these principles of perception in this common room where a group of students is spending an evening. Some playing chess, others playing bridge, some studying, one man strumming a piano, another idly listening, two girls chatting, a student practicing magic. For instance, consider the principle of perceptual constancy. This means that our perception of objects remains constant even while the physical stimuli from those objects are changing. What shape is that sandwich plate? Well, circular, of course. But how did you know it was a circle? True, if you look straight down at it, the image it makes on your retina will be a circle. But from any other position, the image on the retina is actually an ellipse. Yet despite this change, we still continue to perceive the plate as a circle. What shape are these picture frames? That's right, rectangular. But again, how did you know that? Head on, of course, they do strike the eye as rectangular. But from any other angle, the retinal image is actually a trapezoid, as you will see instantly when we remove the surrounding visual cues. But the moment the visual cues are restored, you again perceive the frames as rectangular. This tendency for the perceived shape to remain the same, irrespective of the position or conditions under which we view it, is called shape constancy. Another aspect of perceptual constancy is size constancy. Even though the image on your retina becomes larger, you realize the plate is merely coming closer to you. It actually stays the same size. Visual objects also appear constant in their degree of whiteness, grayness, or blackness. The plate looks darker, but you know that someone just turned off the light. Even when the light is turned on again, you still perceive the plate as the same shade of gray. This is what we call brightness constancy. Thus, perceptual constancy enables us to keep our perceptual world stable even when our sense impressions are recording changes in the size, shape, and brightness of objects around us. While perceptual constancy is usually helpful in our perception, it can also be employed to deceive us, as in the illusion of the diminishing cards. We see that it is getting smaller. The performer helps to reinforce this illusion by squeezing the cards and by showing more of his fingers behind the cards each time. Going behind the scenes, however, we are shown that what is really changing each time is the spread of the cards. Not knowing this, and perceiving the performer's hands as constant in size, we see the cards as getting smaller. Another essential factor in perception is attention. Attention helps us to be selective in our perception of the multitude of stimuli that constantly bombard our sense organs. Thus, it is possible for us to concentrate our attention on something. The black queen, for example. The black queen becomes the focus of perception. Just outside it we're more or less vaguely aware of the board, the other pieces, our opponent's belt buckle making a blurred image above the chessboard. Still further out in the margin of attention are hundreds of other stimuli bombarding our various sense organs. The sound of the piano, an argument about sports cars,
you can take a corner at 80 miles an hour.
Distant traffic,
You don't even hear.
an airplane passing overhead, a room that's too warm, a collar that's too tight. But all we're thinking of is our next move, and so we perceive little else. Once the move has been made, attention can shift, and we now perceive that the room is too warm. Actually, attention is constantly shifting. What is at the focus one moment may be marginal the next. This shifting of attention has, however, a certain orderliness to it. Certain stimuli can, and usually do, get priority on our attention. Let's examine some of the factors that determine this priority. A distant sound that might be a single pistol shot gets no attention from our group. But when the same sound becomes louder and is repeated, it gets the attention of everyone. Well, almost everyone. Even when one activity dominates our attention, its dominance usually is not continuous. Other perceptions come fleetingly into the focus of our awareness and then are replaced again by a dominant item. Another factor that can determine priority on our attention is contrast. You can look right at something and not see it until it moves. You perceive things that move when their surroundings are motionless because their movement contrasts with their environment. Conversely, on a field where movement is general, the motionless rock is what gets our attention. Again, because of the factor of contrast. Another principle of perception, the principle of expectancy, is that what we perceive depends partly upon what we expect or are set to see. Most of us, reading this paragraph, would overlook the typographical error in it. Because we always expect to see two M's in the word swimmer, we do see them, or think we do unless our attention is especially drawn to the mistake. What is this? Well, if you are first shown a series of numbers such as 10, 11, 12, you will have no trouble seeing the number 13. However, if you are first shown the letter A, you will then see that this is the letter B. What you see depends upon what you expect to see. Many illusions depend on this principle. In this trick, pretense of great muscular effort followed by a sudden giving in motion makes you expect a badly bent spoon. Is he really bending this coin? The coin your eye sees is, of course, as flat as ever. But by sliding his fingers in and out across the coin, he makes it appear to bend. An even more celebrated illusion based on expectancy is this slightly modified version of the good old shell and pea game. In this one, the illusionist actually builds up the false expectations from the start. Several times he makes the peas multiply in his left hand, a neat trick in itself, so that by now you've been led to expect that this is the point of the trick, and that it's about to happen again. So your perceptual habits fill in the missing details and make you think you actually saw the peas placed there, and, lo and behold, they never got there at all. In short, we see what we are set to see. Thus, set or expectancy plays a major role in directing and ordering the succession of our perceptual experiences. Another principle is that perception is really an organizing process, a process that organizes sense data into a meaningful result. For example, with normal perception, we see tables, floors, walls, people, pictures, and so on, as objects organized and clear in a pattern. Without the organizing processes of perception, the world would appear very strange, probably like a picture that is out of focus. These organizing processes consist of tendencies that are in part learned and are in part inborn or unlearned. Both kinds of tendencies help us to bring into focus the world around us. One kind of organizing tendency is to perceive figure and ground. By this we mean that objects or figures like this girl are perceived as distinct objects because they are seen as standing out from their general sensory background. Words are perceived as being on a page, and this holds true whether they are in black letters on white ground or the other way round. Just as pictures hang on a wall, so we also see the freckles as being on the nose. We perceive a whiff of perfume as standing out against the relatively neutral background of other odors in a room. As distinctly as when we listen to Boogie Woogie, the varied figure in the treble stands out against the ground of the recurring patterns in the bass. All these are examples of figure-ground perception. This tendency to perceive a figure on a ground is demonstrated by this reversible figure-ground relation. Either you see a white vase against a black ground, or you see two black profiles against a white ground. Notice that it is difficult to see both vase and profiles simultaneously. Another kind of organizing tendency in perception is called grouping. Here are 6 vertical lines, but because of the way they are grouped, you probably see them as 3 pairs of parallel lines. Though your eye must see these as individual dots, you can't help perceiving them grouped together as a 6-pointed star. With a slight change, you now perceive not individual dots, but 2 superimposed triangles. To the retina of your eye, these are just 4 unconnected lines. But because of their grouping, the lines appear to extend and meet to form a perfect square. From our observations of a group of people in a common room, we have noted several basic principles of perception. First, we noted the principle of shape constancy, whereby shapes usually appear the same whether we view them head-on or from an angle. Next, we noted that sizes tend to appear constant whether objects are near or far away. And brightness similarly remains constant even under different illuminations. Another principle of human perception is attention. We perceive best what we attend to. Attention divides the field of experience into a focus that is clearly perceived and a margin of which we have only hazy perception. The bigger, the more intense or louder a stimulus is, and the more it is repeated, the more likely it is to capture our attention and be perceived. We also noted that contrast between a stationary object and a moving background immediately draws our attention to the object. Another principle of human perception is expectancy. We tend to perceive what we expect to perceive. And finally, we noted the principle that perceptual processes organize the world around a person into objects and groups of objects. Evidence of this organizing process is that objects are usually seen as figures on a ground and are, in fact, difficult to perceive in any other way. Further evidence that human perception is an organizing process is the way we perceive as grouped together those objects that are close to each other or similar to each other, or symmetrically arranged, or form some pattern, or form a continuous line. Human perception, then, is a set of extremely elaborate processes through which we organize our sensory impressions into clear, usable, meaningful pictures of the objects and events around us and inside us.